Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
Hello, grade 9 learners. Welcome to today's Natural Sciences lesson. My name is Mr. Sianda Madala, and this lesson is proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. Right, we are still exploring planet Earth and beyond for our term 4, right? So today I want us to look at the four spheres of the Earth and specifically on the sphere of the lithosphere and the rock cycle within it, right? So we're going to look further in the lithosphere and the rock cycle within the lithosphere, right? So now, before we move on, let's look at what we need to achieve by the end of this lesson. So by the end of this lesson, one should be in a position where they're able to describe and explain the structure of the Earth's interior. Secondly, you should be able to explain the rock cycle. That's all that you need to do for today's lesson, right? So you better focus deeply on these two lesson objectives. And all this information is found under the CAPS document on page 78. Now let's look at what we have done before. Right? Earth, we also discussed the Earth and the Sun, right? And here is an example of the Earth in relation to the Sun, right? And also, we have discussed in grade 7, we have discussed the relationship between the earth and the sun, and also the importance of the sun for the life on earth. Then in grade 8, which is the previous grade, right, we simply have done what? The relationship between the earth and other planets in our solar system. Those are all the topics that we have done that lay a foundation for today's topic, right? So if you bring all that knowledge back and try to encompass it with today's knowledge, you'll be able to come up with proper understanding of the solar system and also the four spheres of the earth. Now, our important terms that are associated with this lesson, right? The first one that we have there is lithosphere, right? What does lithosphere mean? We have covered it in the previous lesson, right? And we said that the lithosphere is the sphere of the earth that consists of solid rock and soil. We then have what? Concentric. What does it mean to be concentric? It means arcs of circles having the same center. Hence, concentric, right? They have the same or they share the same center. Also, we have crust, which is the outermost layer of the Earth's surface, right? It is the outermost layer of the Earth. We also have the mantle, right? The mantle. The mantle is the layer of Earth between the outer core and the crust, right? So note the differences between these layers, right? It is the layer of Earth between the outer core and the crust. Also, we have the outer core. The outer core is the liquid layer of the Earth surrounding the inner core. Then we have inner core. The inner core is the innermost solid layer of the earth. Now, that's not all about our terminology, right? We still have others. We have magma as well, which is rock that is so hot and it has melted. Now, we also have what? Rock cycle. And rock cycle is the natural, continuous process in which rocks form, they are broken down, and reform over long periods of time. Then we have what? Igneous rocks. And those are the rocks that form when magma cools down. We also have metamorphic rocks. And the definition for metamorphic rocks is rocks that form when the chemical structure of existing rocks is changed by heat into a new type of rock. Also, we have sedimentary rocks, and these are rocks that form from particles of rock deposited in layers. Then the last one, we have granite, right? And granite is an igneous rock formed from a large mass of magma that cooled slowly deep inside Earth. Now, since we have our terminology, right, I want us to try this baseline activity now. I want us to explore and understand and check also how far we know in terms of this topic, right? So now, our baseline activity simply requires this from you, right? It says match the words in column A with the descriptions in column B, right? So for column A, we have all the words that you need to match with the descriptions in column B, right? Now, for example, the words. In number 1, it is hydrosphere. Number 2, lithology. Number 3, atmosphere. Number 4, lithosphere. And number 5, biosphere. Number 6, hydrology. And number 7, biosphere. So simply because you need to draw a table before you match column A and column B, I need you to take about 5 minutes of your time activity, and remember to send in those answers on the following number, which is 079 578 2908. Let's meet again after 5 minutes. Welcome back, grade 9 learners. Now, I hope you were able to answer all these questions, right? I hope you were able to match column A and column B. Now, let's look at the solutions, right? You simply have to match between column A and column B with the matching descriptions, right? So now, our solutions are as follows. Number one is D, right? Number one is D. And number two is what? It's F. Then number three, it is G. Then number four, it is C, right? Continue to mark your work as we proceed, right? And also number five is B. And number six is E. Then also number seven is what? It is welcome back, grade nines. Now let's sail through together, right? I hope you have enough time to write down the corrections. Now let's sail through together with this topic. Now, the layers of the earth, right? That is our main meal for today. The layers of the earth. Now, we talked about the earth, right? We said that it is made up of four spheres. It is made up of what? The biosphere, the lithosphere, the atmosphere, and the hydrosphere. And we're saying the same earth that has four spheres, it is made up of layers, right? So now, here is a clear demonstration of the layers of the earth, right? As you can see, if you were to cut open the earth, you would find such layers inside the earth that make up this celestial body, the earth. Are we together? So it meaning this would be layer number one, layer number two, layer number three, and layer number four in this instance, right? So now it means what? The earth is made up of layers that enable us to be able to drift, right? Drift with the continents moving in together, have or sustain what? Life. So now, the layers of the earth, right? The earth is one celestial body which is a whole like this, right? It is round in shape. So if you were to cut open the earth, you would get what? One slice of earth which has different layers. Are we together? And the layers are mainly what? The crust, the mantle, the outer core, the inner core. There are four, right? The crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. So if you look carefully at this, right? This is the one slice of the big whole of this celestial body, right? So it is made up of different layers that all together they make up this whole, which is the earth. Are we together? And all these layers, they are concentric, meaning they share what? A common center. They share a common center, and therefore we say they are concentric. So now if you look at this piece here, right, it even has what? Water. It has also the lithosphere that, or the crust that you and I are standing on now. But beneath is what we don't know and going to learn about today, right? Which are the other layers like the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. So now, it is made up of three main layers, right? The earth is made up of three main layers, namely the crust, the mantle, and also the what? The core, right? It is made up of those main layers, which is the crust, the mantle, and the core. So if you were to talk about the core is about 33% of the Earth's mass with 6,856 kilometers in diameter. Are we together? And also the mantle, right? Which is also a layer or the middle layer of the Earth. It makes up about 67% of the Earth's mass. Now we're talking about the amount of matter that the Earth has, right? It is 67% of the Earth's mass, and it is about 2,900 kilometers thick. Whereas the crust, right, which is the upper layer which you and I are standing on now, right, where we see our biosphere, where we see our hydrospheres and so on, right? So now it is less than 1% of the Earth's mass, or the amount of matter in which the Earth is made up of. And it is 5 to 100 kilometers thick. Are we together? So those are the three main layers of the Earth, and the Earth is made up of those three main layers. But the core is divided into two, right? The outer core and the inner core. So now, I also want us to imagine or think of the layers of the Earth like the layers of a cake, right? So when you're baking that cake, you have that sponge part, right? Or that cake part, you have some icing or some cream, another layer of cake, some cream, and so on, right? So this is what I want us to imagine the layers of the Earth like. Now, looking at this piece of cake here, right? It has some icing on top, right? That final icing on top that you and I see, right? But once you start cutting, so let's take that icing as our crust. So once you start cutting that cake, what do you see now? All the inner parts, right? You start seeing all the inner parts, your red velvet, your cream, and so on, right? So going down, you start finding what? The mantle, right? Which is that part which is the red velvet cake. Then after the red velvet cake, there's some icing again, right? Which is your mantle, right? And also the outer core, which is the yellow part of the cake, right? The outer core, then some icing again, then the inner core, which is the white cake. Can you see now? So I want us to picture the Earth in this format. So we said that the Earth is made up of three main layers, namely the crust, the mantle, and the core. So I want us to talk about the crust now, right? What is the crust composed of? Yes, it is the top layer and the thinnest layer of the Earth, right? It is the outermost layer that you and I are standing on now. And it is the thinnest layer of Earth amongst all the other layers. And we said that it is made up of large amounts of silicon and aluminium. So if you still remember these elements when we were talking about elements in Term 2, right? We mentioned such elements as silicon and aluminium, right? So the Earth is made up of large amounts of these elements, namely silicon and aluminium. Also, it is composed of plates on which the continents and ocean rest, right? And these ride over molten mantle. Those plates are called tectonic plates, right? So now sometimes we wonder why continents are so far apart, right? This is because of these tectonic plates when they are drifting the continents apart or together. Are we together? And we're going to learn more about this in the following grades. But now, it is composed of these plates which are called tectonic plates. And also the crust is part of the lithosphere. Remember we said that the lithosphere, it's all the solid rock and soil of the Earth's system. So now there are two types of crusts, right? The oceanic crust and the continental crust. As the words say, right? Oceanic, it is the one that is the floor of the ocean, right? It is the crust that encompasses and houses what? Water. And also the continental crust is the one that you and I are standing on now. All the solids of rocks and soil of the earth. Moving on. The lithosphere itself, right? The lithosphere, we said it's all the solids, or it's all the solid rocks and soil of the earth, right? So the crust and the upper layer of the mantle together make up a rigid or make up a zone of rigid brittle rock called the lithosphere. So now, if you still remember this word also when we were talking about elements, right? We said that brittle means they break easily. So if you think of rocks, right? There are rocks that break easily due to weathering and erosion as well. So all these rocks and the soil, they all form what we call the lithosphere, right? So when you look at the lithosphere, as we said that it's all the solid rocks and soil. It is made up of the continental plate, which is made up of granite rock, and also the oceanic plate that houses the ocean floor. That is the ocean floor, right? And also the lithosphere altogether, it's all the solid rocks and soils of the earth. So now, moving on to the second layer of the earth, right? The mantle, right? So the mantle, if you were to cut again that piece of cake, it is this orange part that we find here, right? That is our mantle. It is right between what? The earth's crust and the core. Are we together? It is all that orange part that you see there. But also the mantle is made up of the upper mantle and also the lower mantle. What happens in between, right? In between, it's where now convection currents take place. Why convection currents, right? This movement is the one that allows the tectonic plates to move and drift apart from each other, making also the continents move away from each other and widening what? The ocean floor. Are we together? So now, the mantle as well, as we're talking about it, right? When you look at this picture, the mantle is all the red parts that you see in that picture, right? It is the largest what? Layer in the earth, right? So the mantle is all these red parts that we witness here. So it is the largest layer of the earth at 2,900 kilometers thick. Can you see how thick it is, right? Compared to all the other layers. And also, the middle mantle is composed of what? Of very hot, dense rock that flows like asphalt under a heavy weight. And the movement of the middle mantle, which is also known as the asthenosphere, is the reason that the crustal plates of the earth move. As I have said to you, right? I said that the mantle is the one that allows what? The tectonic plates to move around or to move away from each other so that the continents as well drift away from each other. Are we together? So it enables what? Continental drifting as well that we're going to talk about in a later grade. So also about the mantle, right? It is solid but capable of flow like fudge, right? It is a semi-solid or a semi-liquid. So we can say it is viscous, right? It can flow, but it does not flow easily. So it is solid but capable of what? Of flow. And as well as it is the thickest layer of the earth, as we have said, at 2,900 kilometers thick. Not only that, right? It is made up of different elements such as the magnesium, the silicon, oxygen, and iron. So magnesium, silicon, oxygen, and iron are all the elements that make up the mantle that you are talking about, such as igneous rocks. So these convection currents cause changes in the Earth's surface, and they are allowed by what? They are allowed by the mantle, right? As you see that it causes what? Changes in the Earth's surface, and those changes are the ones that I just talked about to you now, that they are part of what? Continental drifting. So it is divided also to an upper mantle and a lower mantle, and in between and the middle mantle, that's where convection currents take place. Now, the other layer that we're talking about now, right? The core. Remember, they are made up of three layers, right? We have talked about the crust, we've talked about the mantle, now we are on the core. But I want you to notice something. The core is divided into two. It is the outer core and the inner core, right? Here is the outer core on top and also the inner core at the bottom on that slice of our earth of our earth, right? So now, this is all a sum up of what we're talking about in terms of the lithosphere, right? So we're looking at this. It is that piece of cake or the piece of the earth that we talked about, right? It is made up of the inner core, and the inner core is made up of iron and nickel, and it is in a solid state. Whereas the outer core is made up of iron and nickel in a liquid state, right? And is about what? 2,250 kilometers thick. That is the outer core, right? Whereas the inner core, it is about 1,300 kilometers thick. Then the mantle, as we have said, it is 2,900 kilometers thick. Then the crust is about 5 to 40 or to 100 kilometers thick. So now, we have talked too much, right? I want us to test ourselves in terms of how much we understand so far, right? Here is activity 1, and I need you to take 5 minutes to answer this activity. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now, let's see what you were required to do, right? So number one, you were required to complete the words for each layer on Earth on the diagram, right? And the words are C, I, C, O, C, right? The number two, you have to name the layer of the Earth where the biosphere occurs. For number three, you had to mention examples of minerals found in the Earth's crust. Now let's look at the solutions. For number one, right? The first word there is crust, right? That C is for crust. Then the following one is mantle, right? We're dealing with what? With the layers of the earth. Then the third one is inner core, right? Whereas the last one is outer core. Then number two, right? The name is what? Crust as well. Then number three, it's minerals such as aluminium, iron, calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium, and silicon, right? And it was 3 marks, so you can only mark the first three that you have written amongst these answers, right? So I need you to write down the corrections for 2 minutes. That metamorphic rock also can turn into an igneous rock because as it is stored underground and buried underground, what happens? It undergoes what? Change because of intense heat and forms what? An igneous rock. That's all that we need to know about the rock cycle, right? So that we know that each and every rock type can turn into another type, right? Meaning from igneous rock to a sedimentary rock, from sedimentary rock to metamorphic rock to sedimentary or igneous rock, right? So now, here is a homework activity, right? I want you to take about 5 minutes to copy down the homework, right? So it reads as follows. Number one, it says state the correct scientific terms for each of the descriptions below. And number one is saying the innermost layer of Earth. Number two is saying rock that is so hot and it has melted. Then number three, particles of rock that have been deposited by wind and water. Number four, the natural continuous process in which rocks form are broken down and reform over long periods of time. Then number five, the sphere of the earth that is made up of soil, crust, and the upper layer of the mantle, right? So remember your homework. You need to only state the correct scientific terms for each of the following descriptions. Now take 5 minutes to copy down the homework.
Excellence. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Welcome back, grade nights. Now, when you're at home, right, during your time, please write down this homework, right? This is to test how far you know, right? It's not for punishment. So always do your homework. Make sure that you are ready for the next lesson as well, and make sure that you have got the right corrections for your answers, right? So now, on the next lesson, we'll be talking more now about the mining of mineral resources. Now, my question to you now is, where do we find mines, right? Right on top, where? On the crust, right? But where are they digging to? They're digging towards the, yes, right, towards the center of the earth. Now, it means what? They are digging down what? The crust to other layers, right? So I want you to go home, find out more about this topic, mining of mineral resources, so that when we come together next week, when we teach and learn, it becomes easy, right? So now from me to you now, thank you and goodbye.